In the grand theater of life, we all seek a comeback, a resurgence, a rekindling of our inner fire. But how do we spark that flame? Welcome to Reignite Resilience. This is not just another podcast. This is a journey, a venture into the heart of human spirit, the power of resilience, and the art of reigniting our passions.
Welcome back to another episode of Reignite Resilience. I am your co-host, Natalie Davis, and I am so happy to be back with you all. Pam, how are you?
I am fabulous. 2 days in a row, we get to interview incredible guests, which I love ending my day like this. It's just, we meet new people, we learn new things, and I just think it's beautiful. So I'm excited to be here.
I am as well. I think you are spot on. Some weeks we have guest interviews that pretty much line our calendar. Other weeks we never see each other, you and I, that is. So this is one of those weeks where we get a lot, is it a big dose? We don't want to say dose. That makes it sound like it's not as positive.
No, it's a big dose, but it's a good big dose because we taught a class today together, and we've got another class we're teaching tomorrow. So
tomorrow, I know. 'Tis the season. It is the season. I love when people say, "Oh, it's the summer. Things are so much slower," and I'm like, "For whom?"
That's so cute. Not us.
Not us.
But in fairness, is it ever slow for us?
My calendar would argue that, so I'll just leave that as it is. And you know what? It's just the right pace for this season of my life. I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. So as Pam mentioned, we have a guest. One thing, if you are listening to this episode, I do want to point out is that you have the ability of checking out the video as well on YouTube. We are now housing our episodes on YouTube, so you get a full experience. You get to see all of the animation that both Pam and I have and that all of our guests have. If you guys are not aware, obviously, because you've only heard my voice, I tend to have a face that has a mind of its own. So I am fairly animated. Head on over to check that out. Reignite Resilience Podcast is the YouTube channel when you're listening to this. But today, without further ado, we have a very special guest. And our guest at the age of 28, his name is Dan, was leading a very healthy and active lifestyle. And after an optometrist appointment that was just set to identify the cause of a headache, it was actually cut short, and he was handed a sealed envelope that told him to go directly to the hospital. And what followed that was an emergency brain surgery. And on June 21st of 2014, Dan's reality was shattered by a devastating brain hemorrhage. With no map to guide him on the grueling path to recovery, Dan had to rely on his grit, his perseverance, and his resilience to relearn everything that he once knew: how to walk, how to talk, and even how to smile. Dan McQueen, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome. You have a very rich story to share, and I would like to just turn it over to you. Would you just share with our listeners a little bit about your story? We gave a little bit of insight in 2014, but kind of fill us in. What was that like? What was the emotion? What was the feeling? And what were the experiences that you were going through?
Yeah, for sure. So my story takes place back in London, in jolly old London, England in 2014, as you mentioned. I was having these headaches, persistently worse over a few weeks, taking painkillers like candy. The headaches were like excruciatingly painful. I don't mean like a minor migraine. These were like debilitating headaches. I was on the tube one day. Now the tube's how you zigzag around London, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm lumbering towards Nine Hill Gate tube station. The headaches are so persistent, so all-encompassing. My vision starts to go spotty. And I see stars, and then it slowly starts to fade to black. It's a race. I'm going to Nine Hill Gate tube station. I arrive at the station, step onto the platform, mind the gap if you've been to London, and the curtains drop. The lights go out. I can't see.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to ask you two, able-sighted person your whole life, I'm assuming?
Yes, that's
All of
correct.
a sudden, you're thrust into the depths of blindness in a tube station in London. What would you do? What are your first thoughts? What's your reaction? Tell me what you do.
I would sit down and probably scream.
Well, I'll tell you what I did. Nothing. I stood there and I thought, and I thought, and I thought some more. After the longest 3 minutes of my life, my vision came back and I carried on with my day. Carried on my errand for the day. The next day I went back to A&E. A&E is accident emergency, like ER in the US, I imagine. I told them what had happened, like there's something wrong here. I was blind on a tube station. This is not normal. What's going on? They ran the tests. Again, they thought it was vertigo and they sent me home. But on the way up, they told me I could always get my eyes checked by an optometrist, right? An optometrist is kind of odd. But hey, I'm not a doctor here, so let's figure this out. Next day, the headaches came back with a vengeance. I wasn't blinded, but the persistent headaches were so immense that I found myself in Mr. Patel's chair, the optometrist. He was midway through the routine exam when he stops the exam. Excuses himself from the room, and he comes back a few minutes later with a sealed envelope, which he handed directly to me. He told me to go directly to Moorfields Hospital, which I did. Well, ladies, tell a lie. I stopped at home first to grab a Jack Reacher book by Lee Child, a phone charger, and a bite to eat. Then I made my way to Moorfields Hospital, handed them that same sealed envelope. They ran the same tests again there, then escalated me up to Charing Cross Hospital. We're getting somewhere. I'm thinking, this is positive. This is good. Now, it turns out I had a dangerous buildup of pressure in my brain causing a growth in my pineal gland in my brain. Turns out I required emergency brain surgery tomorrow. It turns out my rules would change altogether. After a frantic back and forth with folks in Canada, the last text message my mom received reads, "I'll see you soon, Mom. Think I'll have a new haircut next time I see you. Love, Dan." Mom's in the air flying to London on June 21st, 2014. I'm on the operating table. Something goes horribly wrong, and I have a massive bleed in the brain, a brain hemorrhage. Then the cyst burst when they operated. Mom lands and finds them in critical condition. I was in a coma for 4 weeks. I wasn't in a consciousness for months after this. Things were dicey, touch and go. When all was said and done, I was learning how to walk, talk, and smile again. That's kind of where things kicked off for me, ladies.
Wow. I mean, you really didn't have a moment to think or process or try to wrap your mind around what was going on. It was just event after event.
Yeah, I messaged my boss at work being like, don't think I'll be on Monday. Like, kind of casual about it. And like, because presumably this should have been like a rather, I mean, as standard as a brain surgery can be. It should have been standard to take the cyst out and it would have been fine.
Right.
But I had a hemorrhage on the table, which caused this chaos.
Yeah.
I was put into a medically induced coma for 4 weeks and I didn't want to wake up from that coma. I was quite happy in the coma, apparently. But it went 0 to 60 in a matter of 8 hours. Healthy, active guy to all of a sudden I'm having brain surgery, to all of a sudden I'm in a coma, to all of a sudden my parents are being told, my mom landed in London, she was told, he may not make this.
Wow.
It looks dire. I had ice blankets above and below me to keep my core temperature down in the coma. Your temperature can't raise above a certain degree, otherwise you have brain damage. So these ice blankets above and below me to keep my core temperature down. So the violent shivering. Alarms constantly went off as blood pressure spiked or heart rate too high. I had a feeding tube to feed me in the coma, and I'd rip it out because I hated this thing going down my nose or down my throat, through my nose. And I'd just rip it out. And I had to put these mitts on me so I couldn't rip it out. And I'd work on these mitts for days to get them free and then rip it out for like a moment of relief. And then put the tube back down and then if the x-ray made to make sure it was in my stomach and my lungs. So I lost about 40 pounds. I'm not a big guy to begin with, so like I was down to nothing, skin and bone. And, woke up from the coma 4 weeks later, my mom, dad, and brother around the bed. And I'm trying to talk, but I can't talk because the tracheotomy had fried my vocal cords. And I pointed at my brother and go, "You, give me a pen and paper. Get me out of here." And I show it to Cam and I go, "You, make it happen." Little did I know I'd be in the hospital for months after this, so I'm pretty glad it didn't break me out. But I was worried that this was going to be covered by medical. I was a Canadian in London, but under an Austrian passport, so European, when London was still part of the EU. So luckily it was covered by the medical system because this would have been a big bill, I think.
Yeah. And so coming out of a coma, this is the thing that is top of mind. Is one, you want to get out, and two, who's paying for this?
Well, I just thought this does not look good. Why are my parents all here?
Yes.
My family all here. Like, what's going on? Let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
I'm hooked up to tubes and hoses. My one eye's wonky as hell. I can't walk. My leg had frozen at an angle in the coma. My leg was atrophied. So I was not dead to rights, but I wasn't far off. I couldn't talk, right? So the way the nurse got me talking again was she took me down to the park. She sat me from the front of these kids playing football or soccer across the park, and she goes, "Dan, Those kids across the park, they don't think you're good enough to talk. They don't think you're good enough to talk, Dan. And I found out pretty quickly that that's a trigger for me, being told I'm not good enough to do something. So I yelled some profanities across the park. I'll spare you and your listeners, but I found my voice pretty quick. But she knew what button to hit, and she hammered it. And I'm so grateful for that bold call, because that ignited this fire in me. Like, I realized that, like, that's a big part of my motivation. I talk a lot of my talks. I'm a speaker now, and I talk a lot of my talks about motivation and where that comes from. And don't try to judge the motivation you get. Whatever wave comes, ride that wave, because the next wave may not be for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Ride the wave that comes, and then try to pivot afterwards. Proving you wrong was a big part of my vibe, and like, it still is. I'm not going to lie to you, but I'm trying to transition that now to service, lend a hand. Your success is my success. I'll now cheer on your podcast for the years going forwards. Your success is my success.
Yeah.
But don't judge the motivation. And then I'm in a wheelchair, right? So I did in the wheelchair in 45 minutes, then took 40, then 35, then 30. This was difficult, arduous. Every bone in my body, every muscle ached and craved as I stood up and moved. I couldn't do anything. I remember being wheeled to the shower in the hospital and then in the wheelchair, and being hosed down in the wheelchair, and then going back to my bed and like transitioning back to bed. That took half an hour to do that as well. It's like everything is just arduous, difficult. I had to wear a splint over my left leg to help me walk again. A splint's like a cast you wear. My leg had atrophied in the coma. So the first night I wore the splint through the night, no issue, no stress. This will be easy, I thought. This will be easy. Hinting that's not going to be easy. So the second night, after 20 minutes, it was painful. After 30 minutes, it was dreadful. After 40 minutes, it was unbearable. I buzzed the nurse. Please take the splint off my leg. I can't take the pain anymore. The third day, they wrapped my leg. They tie it off at the ankle. They give me the clicker, the nurse call button. You go patrol the Wilson ward. Now, the Wilson ward was an L shape, so short on this side, long on this side. Okay, short on this side, long on this side. They leave me in that hospital room that smells like only a hospital room can smell. Sanitized, sterilized, clean, but you wonder what sort of atrocities have been committed under the guise of this lemony zestness. After 10 minutes, legs painful. After 20 minutes, legs dreadful. After 30 minutes, legs unbearable. I start passing the clicker back and forth, trying to distract myself from the pain. Now, I've got double vision, which means I get the pleasure of seeing 2U, not today because I'm wearing an eye patch. For those of you watching YouTube, you already know that. But let's go back to the matter at hand here. The clicker goes back and forth. As the pain ratchets up, my throats get more enthusiastic. Till eventually, inevitably, I drop the clicker. Lands on the hard linoleum floor, 3.5 feet down on the ground. Sugar, I say. Look over the edge of the bed. I can see the clicker there lying on the floor looking back at me. If I can get to that clicker, I can stop this pain. I can end this monstrosity. The only problem was, a fall from that height might break my arm, I thought. In fact, I figured about a 50-50 chance we'd break my arm. A coin flip, not the best odds. I changed tack. I'm trying to undo the splint, but it's not at the ankle, not at the hip. I can't reach that far down. I'm not that flexible. I'm lunging at it, but I can't grab it. Even if I could, I couldn't untie it. Help. Help. The word of the wolves in the L shape, right? Short on this side, long on this side. Short on this side, long on this side. They're at the far end of the ward. They can't hear me on film. 7, flip the coin, drop down and grab the clicker. Even if I break my arm, this splint's got to come my leg number 1, 2, and 3, priority number 1, 2, 3. This is so painful, I can't deal with this. Blowing myself up the edge of the bed, and I crash down in the heat. Blankets, wires, cables, it's all a go. The arm holds. And I hammer the clicker, expecting the nurses to come bursting into the room like the bat signal been put up. They kind of stroll in 5 minutes later. What are you doing on the floor with them? First of all, I say, that's a fantastic British accent. Where are you from again? No, I didn't say that. I said, let's get the splint off my leg, please. I'll tell you all about this. It's not what happens, see, but how you respond to the matters, right? The reason why I'm telling this story is I learned 3 lessons from this experience. The first being, pretty self-evidently, let's not pass the clicker back and forth anymore. That's a bad idea. That leads to problems. The second one is let's tie the splint off at the hip, not the ankle. That way I can undo the shit that's happened going forwards.
Yeah.
And the third lesson was probably most profound. Let's always be solutions-oriented for this going forwards. When things go sideways in life, which they will, how do you resolve your issue then and there? And then backtrack as to why it happened. But focus on the solution first. That clicker was my lifeline. That was my everything. That clicker was the only thing that mattered in the whole world that moment in time. How do I get to that clicker? And that meant risking breaking the arm. But solutions-oriented is a huge part of my vibe now. And I try to pass it on in my talks, so it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So maintaining that focus on the solution. And so you had to get the staff on board, having that conversation with them. Like, don't put me in this position again. Can we figure the solutions out first and then go down to the long end of the hallway?
Well, I made the own. It was my fault to drop the clicker, right? It was on me.
Right.
That's my fault. So like, don't pass the clicker back and forth. One, tie the splint off at the hip, not on the ankle, so I can then tie it should this happen going forwards. I can be responsible for my own saving. And the third was like, always focus on the solution first.
Yeah.
I want to share one more story before we dive into questions. But walking in Tooting Broadway. So have you ladies been to London, England?
Yes.
Have you been to Tooting Broadway?
No.
All right. Well, let me set the scene for you. Tooting Broadway is an area in South London, okay? Area they call up and coming, which means loud sirens, drugs, gangs. It's dirty, it's hectic, and boys are busy. I'm walking with a cane, I'm walking with an eye patch. After 4 months in a wheelchair, I'm literally Bambi on ice. I turn the corner to walk on the high street for the first time, immediately get slammed into by someone. I stagger back a few feet. Someone scurries past me on the right-hand side. I thought I was done with the rats. Someone had been stabbed on the sidewalk over here. I'm thinking, this is a pretty wild place to learn to walk. After a few days of this, I was thinking, this is the worst place to learn to walk in the world. Can't they see I'm trying to walk here? Can't they see I'm trying here? And then one day my perspective shifted. Maybe this isn't the worst place to learn to walk in the world. Maybe this is the best. If I can walk here, I can walk anywhere. The Tooting Broadway didn't change, right?
Yeah.
I went from the worst to the best in my mind, and I moved to that. What are you looking at in your life you're convinced is the worst? Convinced it's the absolute worst. Hey, maybe it is. Maybe you can find a way to turn down the suck a little bit, shift that perspective a little bit. Iron Mike Tyson famously said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Now, your punch may not be a brain hemorrhage, right? Facts. It will be a job loss, a breakup, a diagnosis for you or a loved one. You will take that punch in the mouth. How do you respond? I'm offering a compass here, not a map, but a compass. It always points towards true north. Look at things like mindset, perspective, and hacks. Hacks that allow you and your team to be better than yesterday, tomorrow. My name is Dan McQueen. And the reason why I told you that story about learning to walk in Tooting Broadway is when you change the way you look at the world like it changes. And you don't need a brain hemorrhage to understand that.
Yeah.
Some lessons from Tooting Broadway.
Oh my goodness. That's huge. And you utilize that hashtag better than yesterday. And you maintain and focus, helping others utilize that to achieve their goals. Tell us a little bit about where that came from, the better than yesterday. Where did that originate, and how do you incorporate that when you're working with individuals or when you're just speaking to people?
Everything in life is better than yesterday. My life now is better than yesterday. I'm trying to improve it and streamline and learn from my mistakes. So on this podcast a while ago for gaming, like I don't know how I got connected with it, but I was on a gaming. I'm not a gamer. Let's leave it at that. Last game I played was Mario Kart 64. The guy asked me, he's like, "What do you play?" I'm like, Mario Kart 64. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Cool. So life's Mario Kart 64, right? You're going around laps. First lap, you hit the obstacle in the left-hand turn on the second turn. Second lap, you hit the same obstacle. Third lap, you know that obstacle's there. You got to drive around this thing, man. You got to adapt. You got to be better than yesterday. You got to improve your lot. Learn from your mistakes. If you keep failing at the same mistake, I can't help you. But if you're willing to try and improve your lot, I got time for you. Everything in life is better than yesterday. How do you improve your lot? How do you make things better than they were? And I embody this ethos every day. I wake up with intention. I with the brain injury now, I've got, I'm not out of the woods. It's been 10 years since the brain injury, like this past summer. I still suffer from fatigue, double vision. Like, I'm a bit impulsive, I'm a bit direct, I've got quirks, And if I don't follow a regimented routine to build myself up for the day and rest and recuperate, I'm not as good as I could be. And only by failing do I realize that I can be better if I take naps, if I take breaks, if I pace myself, if I'm not trying to push myself all the time. I got to respond to my new parameters, my new battery, so to speak. I've got a Whoop strap, which is, I don't know if you've heard of this, but it tracks your rest, recovery, and strain. And I swear by this thing because I look at my rest and recovery in the day and see how I'm geared up. Can I take on strain today? Can I be exercising to be straining my body, or do I need to rest today and recover? And I'm pretty good at judging this and kind of building my day around what my body needs and requires. but you got to listen to it, and with everything. Better than yesterday is not just like a quirky little saying that I use, but it's something that I embody. And I implore your listeners to try it as well.
Mhm. I think that's huge. Embodying that statement, better than yesterday.
Yeah.
That's significant.
I think
Huge.
so, but it's like only by failing do you realize where you can be. And like I fall down 7 times, get up 8. Like I'm not gonna stop.
Yeah.
Me chasing down the speaking career now, it's not easy, but it's simple, right? It's not easy, but it's simple to do this. Nothing's easy, but it's simple.
Yeah.
I want to walk in. How do you walk? We got to do this. Got to put in time on the Zimmer frame. Put the splint on. The splint's painful. You got to implore this. You got to embody this. You got to go through the difficult stuff to get to the other side of good stuff. That's where the gold lies. So everything in life is simple, but not easy.
Mm-hmm.
When you went through this, what was the thing that happened that made you decide that you wanted to go and speak and help other people through difficult situations?
Good question. Thank you for that. I was in New York, visiting my brother, and I went out for a walk to have a coffee, and I just had this epiphany of like, this talk kind of came to me in my head about like, well, these hacks I've got, these, value propositions, these ways to kind of help outpatients navigate the world outside the nerfed up hospital walls. Because life outside the hospital, after you've been there for like 6 months, is quite an adjustment, right? Everything in the hospital is like catered to you. People look out for you and feed you and bathe you and they're conscious of your space and they give you the time to do things. But like in the real world, that Tweety Bravo experience, like they bump into you, crash past you. It's like it's a different world. If you're not ready for that, it can be quite abrasive and quite challenging to navigate that. So I built this talk to share with outpatients to show them the way out is through, to show them how they can navigate this and to share my story. Now I share my story not to get the attaboys of like, look what I've been through, look how great I am. Ladies, there's probably a bit of that in their story for sure. I'm not perfect. But it's more so you can see like, look what he's done. Why can't I do this?
Mm-hmm.
I did these tests last year at Health Tech Kanaka Brain Injury Clinic in Surrey, BC, Canada. Well, I gave a keynote for actually a few months ago as well, so shout out to them. But they ran these tests, brain scans. They put this cap on your head. They inject you with this fluid, and they ask these questions like cucumber, dog, car, microphone, and they check the synapses fire, and if it's like associating the images and memories, or if it's normal or not. The results came back as average, right? Average. And which is pretty good. 2 brain injuries and like average is not bad. But I read this as shockingly average. I'm shockingly average. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that's good because that means I'm no better or smarter than you. I'm just chosen to go forwards. I've just chosen to lean in his toes over the nose of my board and ride this wave down. I played one more story and then I'll let you guys ask some questions. Sorry. I played Monopoly a little while ago with my family last year or 2 years ago in Gibson's. And I was a bit cheeky. I looked at the rules of Monopoly or like the best strategies for winning Monopoly, right? And I read like, avoid the utilities, avoid the railroads, avoid like the high-end ticket items. Focus on getting a Monopoly. Save your money for Monopoly. I'm going around the board. Land on the utility. Do you want this utility down? No, thanks. I'm okay. Land on like the railroads. Do you want this? No, thanks. Land on Park Place, like the swishest location on the whole bloody map. Do you want this, Dad? No. Dad, do you know how to play Monopoly? Yeah, I do. I got a Monopoly on like Marvin Gardens, the yellow ones, the first row of Monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
And I put all my money into houses and motels and that. You land on that spot, that's $1,200. You're bankrupt. My brother says it's the most complete game of Monopoly he's ever seen played. The reason why I tell that story is if you know what is right, if you know the plan is correct, follow through even if people are telling you this is not the right way to go about things. Believe in yourself, believe in your plan, and follow through. Hold your nerve. Are you sure you don't want to buy Park Place? Yeah, I don't want to buy Park Place. I want to get a Monopoly here. Like, focus on how you can resolve your issue. Like, in life, you know the way through. Not always, but like you can implore this and learn from this from like podcasts, books, mentors. They're going to tell you how to get through certain situations, but you got to follow the plan. You got to follow to a T. Don't deviate. Just commit to the plan and follow through. That's why I'm here today speaking, because you can get through this, but like you've got to follow through with this stuff.
You said something in one of your speeches that I watched about live your life like you're the hero of your own story. Absolutely loved that. Where did that come from? What was the inspiration?
That came from a YouTube clip from Joe Rogan that I listened to, a motivational clip. And the way I embody this is, when I woke up in that hospital bed, my mom, dad, and brother were on the table, around the bed, sorry. And I'm told, hey, Dan, you had a brain hemorrhage, you're in a coma. You can't walk, talk, or smile. Smile is still, I got the other two back. The smile is still, work in progress, but we'll go with that. But like, what do you do when you wake up in that bed and you've got nothing and you're told this has happened to you? What do you do now? That's what I'm curious about. I love other people's stories. Like, for instance, there's a guy I listen to called Paul DeGelder. Are you too familiar with Paul DeGelder?
No.
So he's a Navy diver, clearance diver in Australia. He got attacked by a bull shark and lost his arm and his leg in this bite. Almost died, was bleeding out, got saved, but woke up in the hospital with his leg amputated, his arm amputated. And the first time I heard his story, I was enthralled by the shark attack story. Every time I've heard a story since, I skip the shark attack and go right to the hospital bed, waking up there, being told, hey, you had this happen to you. And here I started doing pull-ups in the bed to try and strengthen his arms to build himself back up, because you can't control this stuff. Stuff's going to happen in life that's going to be out of left field, and you can't deviate from this. But like, you control how you respond to it. It's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. That's Epictetus. That's not mine. But I believe this with my whole heart. Like, don't worry about like why something happened. Like, it happened. It's not fair, but it's not personal. This didn't happen to me. This happened for me. Like, now I look back in my life and you wish it didn't happen then? I always say, no, I don't, because I'm only alive because this blip was in my DNA. If it didn't have this blip in my DNA, it wouldn't be me. My life is through this blip in the DNA. They said the odds of you being a human being are 400 trillion to 1. 400 trillion to 1 is a big number. Right? Look how many zeros that is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're lucky enough to get a hand and play this hand, you can whinge about, well, I don't like the hand because this happening. It's like, well, that's your hand. Play the hand. So it's a mindset thing, right? But like, that's not easy to hear for people that are going through a tough time, because acceptance is really tough to deal with. But I'm telling you right now, acceptance is the absolute key to things.
Mm-hmm.
You can accept what happened to you and move forwards. You can accept the new parameters and play within those parameters. I'm doing that now. And it's not easy, but it's simple, right? To say, accept your fate or your what happened. Maybe it was a car crash. Maybe it was a disease. Maybe it was an amputation. Maybe who knows what it was. You have to accept it, that it happened, and take steps to improve your lot when it happens.
I think that goes hand in hand with the second piece that you talk about when you talk about the hashtag better than yesterday, is being able to adapt, right? So if you're accepting and then you adapt, and it's kind of that realization of, this is the life that I'm going to live, or this is the journey that I'm on, and now what do I want to do with it? And then committing to yourself. And I think that's a huge piece. When we talk about this, as has come up the last couple of episodes, is that oftentimes we'll make the commitment to ourselves, and then we don't give ourselves a hard time when we let ourselves down. We just move on to the next thing and just dismiss it. But we really need to hold true those commitments that we make to ourselves the same way that we would have made a commitment to someone else.
So that's a great point. Alex Hormozy says this one line, I'm going to butcher it now. Excuse me, Alex. Outwork your self-doubt. Prove to yourself you do what you say you're going to do, day in, day out.
Yeah.
I hold promises to myself now. I don't negotiate with myself. I go in the pool. I swim 3 times a week now. When I get in the pool, I set an intention for how many laps I want to complete.
Yeah.
Give me 40, 60, 70, 80. I think it, I have to do that. It's my rule. Save one exception. If there's a backstroker in my lane, I will get the hell out of that lane faster than anyone else. I give myself an out there's a backstroker in there, because they bump into you. There's like, oh, so sorry. It's like, well, yeah, there's 4 people in the lane. Why are you backstroking? I've got a special thing with backstrokers. Let's not get into that right now.
That might be a hot topic.
That's a trigger for me. That's a trigger for me. But I don't negotiate with myself. I prove to myself I do what I say I'm going to do day in, day out. I've got a stack now of proof that says I do what I say I'm going to do. I cold shower every day for 3 minutes. Yeah. And I kind of crave it now. I didn't initially. I hate it in the wintertime in Canada. It's cold. It's freezing. I don't want the cold water. But I do it to prove that I say I do what I say I'm going to do. I earn that, and I get a check mark. And then I look back at the last weeks, months, and years, and I know I do what I say I'm going to do. So when stuff comes up that's difficult, I know I can do it because I do what I say I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like a battle you have to do with yourself. And it's not it's difficult to get the ball rolling with that, but once you do it, it's addictive. Like I crave that cold shower now. The hit of dopamine, like, they say it's the equivalent of like a tab of ecstasy or like a bump of yayo, but like allegedly, let's say that right now.
Perfect. Yes.
It's a craving that I have for like improving my lot and getting that jolt of like get up and go.
Yeah.
But I've earned that through tireless time in, time out, doing what I say I'm going to do. And that takes time to prove that out. But you start with a small, simple task once, then twice, then 3 times, then 4 times, then 10 times, and 20 times. I used to live in this place in London called Haringey Ladder. This grid system of houses that live in this block structure. I go for a walk for 1 block one morning and listen to my podcast or my audiobook. Next week I do 2 blocks, then 3 blocks, then 4 blocks. Before you know it, I've got an undeniable stack of proof that I do what I say I'm going to do. And I've got this for weeks, months, and years of doing this. But like, don't negotiate with yourself. If you say you're going to do it. Like, keep promises to yourself. Because that's the only thing that matters. I can look myself in the mirror now every day and be like, you did what you say you're going to do. And that's like, I don't seem like some hardo, like you got to do what you say you're going to do. But like, that's the way forward. And I believe it with my whole heart. And that's why I speak now, because I want to show you what you can navigate through. Like, look at my story. Look what I've been through.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, this is what I've learned. Like meditation. I used to meditate for 2 minutes in the morning, then 4. The next week, then 6, then 8, then 10, then 12, then 14, then 16, then 18, then 20, then 22, then 24. I ratcheted this up to a point where I can do this day in, day out without even thinking about it. But by proving to myself that I do what I say I'm going to do, I can build this evidence, this locker that I can show you.
In the grand theater of life, we all seek a comeback, a resurgence, a rekindling of our inner fire. But how do we spark that flame? Welcome to Reignite Resilience. This is not just another podcast. This is a journey, a venture into the heart of human spirit, the power of resilience, and the art of reigniting our passions.